good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands, 99.9999% Quindy, and a bit of Justin and John, although I have to give Justin primary billing now because we've actually heard from him twice in the last week, and we haven't heard from John lately. Just a couple of posts, John, and you could be bumped up to ahead of Justin. Hi, everybody. How's it going? I have total squirrel brain today, so expect me to go off topic today. Total squirrel brain. Squirrel brain, squirrel. I see them out my back window all the time, so, I can't help but be inspired. Thank God it's Friday, right? Right? It is a lot of Quindy, but we do get a lot of Quindy in Chat Babble, and that's part of what makes our chat so awesome. Indeedy. Okay, well, yay. We have a burgundy dress to paint. We do. It's true, Quindy. It's all true. So we're working on our Dreadmere Madam Delia, who is much too heavy for her base here, so blunk, because she's metal. Squirrel Brain Anne is just like, meow. Mostly because I was like really into planning my classes for KublaCon before the stream this morning, so I absolutely squirreled out there, and my brain is miles away. So yeah, so first of all, I think to preserve this burgundy color, which I believe was Ergothoa red, I think that's what we were using. Yeah, that pretty red. It's such a pretty red, isn't it? Lovely. So if you like this red, if you like our starting color, Ergothoa, that's where you should go. And I want probably a bluish or purplish color if I want to maintain that burgundy look for my shadows. So, because, the best, many of the wonderful red wines that we know as burgundy have a deep purpley hue. So we should look for some purpley hues. We could go for reddish purple, or we could go for, let's see what I've got here. We could mix. We do have Kalian wine, but it is a lighter color, so it will not work. Burgundy wine is our obvious one, but I don't know if I actually kept it here in my lineup because we have Necromancer Purple. So if you're wondering if a color is darker or lighter, just put the buttons up next to each other like this, and you can see that Necromancer Purple is just a little bit lighter. So that will not work. We're going to have to go for a really dark color. However, I do like Necromancer for this, and I think maybe I will mix it with Rogue Shadow or Brown Liner. Yes, exactly, Quindy. Exactly. So yeah, maybe I'll mix these guys together and see. Notice that the Ergothoa red is very warm, and the Necromancer purple, of course, being purple, is very cold. So sometimes, guys, when you mix a warm and a cold color, they actually go a lot darker together than they did apart. And that's the muting. That's essentially the colors being muted by the warm and the cold mixing together. So depending on the pigments that are in a thing, you can sometimes make them do that. Which is, and of course, most people consider that a downside because they're like, I want to mix these two colors, and oh my god, the color changed, and yada yada. But in reality, once you understand that it can happen, you can use this to your advantage. I'm going to try mixing these guys 50-50 and see what kind of color I get. And then I might darken it with Rogue Shadow. And the reason I would use Rogue Shadow instead of Brown Liner, which I also have over here somewhere, hiding Brown Liner, is, and you can even see this a little bit. See how more yellow Brown Liner is? This one. You can kind of see that it's a more yellow-brown. And you can see that this one is more reddish. So if you're doing purples and reds, try to choose the liner color that goes with those. Unless you're trying to do, to purposefully shift it. Like if we wanted to shift this much colder, we could go with blue liner instead. So that's an option. But we're going to mix these together and see what we get. And then we're going to tune it, depending on what I see. What I see and what I like. All right, let's actually back out so we can actually see our palette a little bit better. So we'll start with a drop of Ergothoa, which is the beautiful dark red that we have already. That was kind of a fake drop. There we go. Large bubble in that drop. So do you guys have any fun planned for your weekends? I'm going to probably be working on my con handouts, to be honest. I've also got writing club, and I've got my stream tomorrow. Don't forget, Anne's stream is tomorrow. Twitch.tv/paintingbig. I'm going to do a little bit more. Since my red drop got out of control, I added just a little bit more of the Necromancer purple. Free comic book day. Nice. So you're going to be picking up free comic books? All right, so let's mix these together and see what kind of color we get. I'm betting we're going to need a little bit of liner in there. But yes, if you haven't given me a follow on the Twitches, you should go give me a little Twitch sub, or not a sub, but you know, follow me, so that Twitch can like totally fail to notify you when I go live. You know, Twitch, thanks. All right, so I'm gonna mix these two together. And it definitely shifts colder. It's actually a pretty color, mixing Urgathoa and the Necromancer purple. That's an interesting color. It is purpley. It's purpley and winey. But now I think maybe I do want blue liner, and I don't know if I still have it over here. Yes, I do, blue liner. I think I might want blue liner. Boop, just a little drop. And let's see if we darken this down. Now, all the liner colors have black pigment in them. But when you mix red with black, you actually get a blue shift. You get a purple shift. So this actually plays with us in attempting to make a new color that we can use to shade this beautiful burgundy. So the color that we end up making is a lot like this. Kind of grapey. See that pretty color? Pretty pretty. And it's darker than our existing color because blue liner has black in it. Now, the liners do have some traditional black pigment, but they also have a more translucent black pigment in there, depending on the color, depending on the liner color. We usually have both, but because it's because the liner or the black pigment that comes naturally in the base is more translucent, that you can get some nice wash effects with them. It's not a very opaque or dirty pigment. So let's try this out. I'm going to throw another drop of water. I added a brush full, but I'm going to throw a drop in there. Morning, morning, everybody who is newly coming in. We are mixing a purple. We used our base color on her for her burgundy dress, which is Urgathoa red. We mixed a little Necromancer purple in there from a fast palette. Believe it's the Gloom and Grave fast palette, isn't it? I think we used it for our Crimson Herald. And we're going to use that to shade her. But I need to mix it up a little bit. I am going to be watching Overwatch League, doing my Twitch stream, probably playing a little WoW with David because I've been trying to be a good girlfriend and play his current obsession game with him. And do my writing club on Sunday, and get my handouts started for Kubla, since I started on one this morning. You can actually comment, yes. Well, there we go. Get the granny glasses online here. All right, I'm just going to take a little bit of this beautiful purple that we mixed, and I'm going to kind of add it to some of the shadows here. And it may not read very purple at all until you build it up. When you've got dark colors like this, and they're similar to each other, you may not even get the hue right away. It may just look like a shadow. You may not get the blue out of it at all, even though we took pains to do it. As you build it up, you might get more, but it's just the nature of dark colors to just look dark, and although your eye may pick up kind of subconsciously that it's purple, it's not going to be like eye-glaringly purple shadows, which is good. That's not really what we wanted. We wanted a good shadow for this red, and I think it is that. And I'm just naturally shading where I can see the light is casting a shadow. And bringing in, you can see that that's more contrast now. Bringing in a little more contrast. And since I've thinned it, and these are kind of transparent colors to begin with, it's not a super harsh shadow either. Do a little bit of shadow under the hand here, and a little bit under the arm back here. Learn to think about, like, when something is overlapping or something is above and would cast a shadow on something, learn to think about putting that in shadow. Yeah, it's Friday. I don't know what's going on either, Quindy. Oh, thanks, Turnip. Yeah, you can go back and watch the VOD on this one to watch me paint the hair. She's got she's got a lot of waves and curls in there, so there was a lot to pick out on that session. I don't know which stream that was. Not many ago on her. She's been trucking right along. This model's been fast so far. So I'm going to bring that shadow in, and I'm going to shade under the bust. So you can see me putting in shadow. See that band of shadow I just painted in? It isn't very apparent when you've got the miniature upright when the natural lighting is taking over, but then when I tilt it, you can see the shadow that I painted in. So I'm really just emphasizing then what the natural lighting is doing for me. But using the natural lighting to figure out where those shadows go is just the easy peasy way to place your shadows. Thank you all for the compliments. I'm glad you like her. I think she's turning out quite well so far. We'll see what we can do with the dress. So I'm going to kind of artificially put some shadows in here. I put one there because where the shoulder meets the bust, there would be a bit of a dip. And so I'm putting a shadow in there, even though it's not really sculpted on, but you can see that shadow right there. I don't want this collar to be like all the same color is why. I want to be able to focus. And over here where the hand is right next to it, there's definitely a shadow in that same spot on the other side. But yeah, I don't want that ring of red around her neckline to be all the same color. That's kind of boring. Ah, there we go. Quindy with the link. I painted the hair in that video. So if you wanted to see how I painted it and the colors that I used for the brunette, then you should go check out that video that Quindy just posted. And I'm going to get some rogue shadow out because I want to line around on some of this red. I didn't line where the red met the cream, and I did some places, but not other places. I used walnut for this originally, but I'm going to go to the rogue shadow now for some more subtle, because I can also use it as a shader, whereas the walnut is a little bit too bold for that. There are times when walnut is too bold. There are times when you want a more subtle line, and that is when you reach for your liners. If you want a really bold cartoon line, that's when you reach for your walnut brown as a liner. Or if you need to thin it way down and still get a fairly dark line, because as you thin the liners, they definitely fade out, which is good when you're doing natural shadows, but not so good when you're doing really bold lining. All right, so pretty much just wanted to put a line in here to separate out these areas. It's pretty subtle what I'm doing, but as I highlight, those lines will become more evident. And I do want it a little bit subtle. I don't want like really bold lines here. I just want a little additional shading to bring out details. So I'm going to shade around some of these little poofy sleeves. And then I'm going to bring in my shadows on the poofy sleeves with this color that we mixed up. And we will get to highlighting the red today. And then I'm going to have to figure out, so I'm going to line around this border here. I wonder, she's a bit dark. Will this help? Yeah. Sometimes it helps put a black background on the figure at this point so that you guys can see it a little better if it's already very dark. My gray works for most things, but if I want the color to look a little lighter, then you guys can see it a little better. So just putting in, and if I blorf, it's no big deal. If I get a little line there, I just rinse out my brush, bring some water back, and just scrub it right off. Liners are very easy to correct that way because they, especially when it's thin down, it doesn't set right away, and I can scrub it off very easily. Can I get closer? Yeah, sure. I figure out where I'm in focus. There we go. So yeah, I guess I have a busy weekend. I try not to think of it as a busy weekend because I hate feeling too constrained. But I guess I have a stream and a writing club and a lot of class planning to do. And Overwatch League games to watch. Although that's leisure, so... And again, sometimes you're going to blorf a little, just a little bit of water, takes that right off. You can also correct rough lines. Just have to be a little bit quick with it, like do it right away, don't wait. Writing, I don't ride. I rode horses when I was a kid. But I was never, like, that happy with them, and they were never that happy with me. So, just too big animals for me. My giant dogs are enough. But no, I have a writing group, a science fiction fantasy writing group, and I go and do that every other Sunday. Sorry for the lack of enunciation. I blame Friday. I also blame dropping my pokey tool on the floor. Must rescue pokey tool. Necessary part of this balanced painting session. Hey, Pendrick. I'm just a wreck today. Reach down to get the pokey tool, paint a stripe across my desk, you know, like all those things you do. There we go. I rubbed some paint off the bottom here, so I'm touching it up. Yeah, Pokey Tool was like, it's Friday, I'm out. I'm totally with that Pokey Tool in spirit. I'm totally there. So just blocking in that. You're gonna, with a big metal model like this, where she overextends over her base, even though I'm not, like, trying to touch her, you will get a little rub off. It's really not. It's annoying, but it's not a big deal. Yeah, they're fine, Estrogene. Liners are regular paint. They just have slightly different chemical compositions, but everything in MSP mixes with everything else in MXP. Otherwise, we would have like marketed it as a different product. Liners are just better at some stuff. I mean, you guys have seen me mix blue liner with pure white a lot, so Shouldn't come as any surprise. Plus, I just mixed blue liner with the reds, right? To make this color, I just mixed a drop of blue liner with Ergothoa red and Necromancer purple. So the answer is yeah. Yes, you knew, Pendrake. No, we've got too much stuff coming online. And I'm more of a fantasy person, to be fair. I like some science fiction. I'm pretty selective in my science fiction. But we have, our Bard Song is finally in the mail, so we should be getting it soon. So as far as gaming, once that arrives, then it's going to be on. I want to do some... The way that David relaxes and the way that I've kind of gotten into relaxing too is by painting our game miniatures, just super speed painting them. So it's kind of a nice break from doing everything meticulously. So once Bard Song hits, we're both going to be painting Bard Song. I'm so busy normally with everything in my life that I don't have a lot of, I've got very little leisure time that I can spare for doing gaming stuff, so. And a lot of that time I just end up putting toward working on my nonprofit, working on my dog stuff and things like that. Yes, washes versus layering. Very, very simply, Sexilia, washes are thicker than... Oh, sorry. I thought you said the glazing. Okay. So are you talking in glare? Oh, sorry, squirrel brain today. Let's reset. Washes versus layering. You mean layering in shadows versus using a wash? Yeah, I used to love motorcycles when I was a kid, Pendrake, but since then I've come to realize how freaking dangerous they are, and I'm like, nope. Okay, so I used to use washes. I thought I was doing myself a favor because I thought that it would make me faster. What I found, Sexilia, is that because the washes made everything dirtier, one, I didn't like the dirty effect that I got when I was using washes. It colors everything. And I found that I lost a lot of time going back and having to re-put in my midtone, that I put the wash over. So nowadays, what I'm doing now is just painting these shadows into this red. And I can do it much, much faster. I can get this shadow, so you can see the shadow color, right here, and right here, and right here. I can get these shadows painted in super much faster than... And I don't have to go back and touch up. So if you want to use the wash as a deepening thing where you're trying to darken the color over the whole figure, then I think washes are definitely worth it and can give you a lot of mileage. If, though, you are wanting the wash just in the recessed areas and then you're planning to go back and have to, re-highlight and retouch up everything, you might consider taking up layering instead because I find it just saves me a lot of work that way. I mean, most people use washes for army style stuff. That's a kind of a no-brainer because usually you're not. But even there, to be frank, I went away from it because when I was trying to paint my wood elves, which were a lighter colored army, greens and whites and, light and dark greens and whites and light and dark browns, I found that it really didn't save me any time. I was better off just painting the dark green into the shadows and going because my light colors wouldn't work very well with washes. There was too much work to bring it back up. So it's not risky, but it's and you don't even sponge the excess. The excess, you pull it off with your brush, Sexilia. So okay, here, let's just do it. Let me grab some of my liner mix here. We're going to grab some of my rogue liner. Let's do it over one of these things. I do use mediums with washes, but medium for me is Reaper Brush On Sealer. It pretty much acts like a matte medium, Sexilia. So if you were thinking about, you can use regular matte mediums with our paint, with Reaper and with most hobby paints that are acrylics. Regular matte medium will work, or any of the company's sealers that they make. Also, there we go. Now I can. You always want to shake the sealers really well though, because the matting agent will settle out. We have agitators in our bottles. Reaper does. So I also come from a 2D art background, so you're in the right place, by the way. So yeah, I'm using a couple drops of brush on sealer, and I'm going to use like a drop of water, and then I'm going to look at my paint consistency. I do use a well palette, unlike lots of miniature painters. I've always used one. I liked these before wet palettes were popular, but what I find when you're starting out with miniature painting, if you don't have a great grasp of paint consistency at this level where we thin everything so much, the well palette lets you control how many drops of water and how many drops of paint. And if you use a fair amount of them, it'll stay wet for an hour or two or more. I keep just adding a little bit of water every hour and it stays good. I used to be able to just paint for 4 or 5 hours, no problem, before I had to like rebuild some colors. So I'm going to disagree there, Corsair. I actually don't like it on tanks or at all. I prefer to line the panel lines because I like my vehicles clean. If you want your vehicles dirty, then I'll agree with you that you can get some really good results with washes. But I actually, one of the guys who runs the historicals table at ReaperCon, Glenn's an IPMS Grandmaster, and for his shading, he more like paints the different surfaces of the tank in a ground color that's different depending on their angle. So like if he's got a surface that's upright, it's going to be the lightest. If you've got a slanted surface, it might be a little bit darker. If you got a horizontal surface, it's going to be like the mid, and any underlying surfaces will be shadows. So he doesn't do the whole overall wash. It's an easy way to get panel lines, but man, you've got so much touch-up work to do if you want to get the color back up after that. That really encapsulates my problem with washes, by the way. Is that kind of thing, that amount of work that I need. So, okay, so this is too thin, actually. It's a really light wash. The problem, I mean, you could use it, but look at how light it is even falling off. And the problem with Sextilia, just so you know, the issue with building washes and acrylics is, of course, they're going to dry lighter. So when you thin down acrylic paint, it looks nice and dark, but then when it actually dries on the model, it's going to dry lighter. Now that's good for your upper surfaces, sure, but it's not so good for your shadows. So I am going to add just a little bit more paint. There's ratios for this stuff, but I was starting with paint that I'd already thinned. If you're interested in Master Series paint, Sextilia, I don't know if you have tried Reaper's line or not, but I did a free video. It was actually a class for ReaperCon a couple years ago that it was online con, so we have it permanently for free up on our YouTube. But it talks about MSP and how much to thin it for different things, including washes and layering. And Quindy's got the link right there. Yeah, I mean, it's all like, man, I'm crooked today. It's all... I mean, they're different takes for tanks and mechs and all that, you know, depending on where you're coming from, just like with our hobby, right? Just like with figures. So, oh yeah, I mean, for little tiny mechs, sure. He's doing historical kits, so they're more Warhammer sized. Sure, yeah. Okay, so I've darkened the wash down a little bit. I'm going to kind of look at it up on the surface here. The thing you don't want to see is you don't want it separating out. This is pretty even, so that's good. If you see that it's darkening significantly near the edges, you've got a broken wash. That's why we use mediums when building washes, because if you thin the paint with water too much, it will break and it will dry in weird ways. I think I do want just a little bit more of this rogue shadow. All right. So, okay, this is more like what I expect a wash to be, where you want it usually pretty dark in the shadows. And when you pull it thin over the palette, it only discolors it a little bit. You're never going to get to the point where it doesn't discolor your top colors. Now, the other thing we're going to run into here is that when you do washes, you really want your color to be lighter than this dark red. The lighter your color is, the more extreme your wash will bring out the details. So if I were to put this wash over something cream colored, it would have the more profound effect, but it would also dirty the surface hugely. So for a red, I would probably want to be putting a wash more over something like, maybe not as bright as clear red, but something like blood red. So to give you this is our pure pigment red. So a slightly like this. You'd get pretty good results putting a dark red wash over blood red. So we're probably not going to see a lot of difference because this is such a dark color. So that's another trick about using washes. Oh, good, Copperhand. Yes, and Quindy's got the link. Yes, I'd be happy to give Quindy cred. All right, so let's do them right next to each other, actually. So here I was painting in the shadows, and here I'm going to do this wash. So I also have a series, actually, Saxolia, on my YouTube. To just totally digress, I have a lot of media. I do a lot of education. I have a Patreon, I have a YouTube, and I do this stream for Reaper. So, because I love teaching this stuff. But anyway, my YouTube is also free, and I have a new series, Saxolia, on fundamentals of mini painting, and it goes over, we're up to dry brushing now. So we've got like lining and dry brushing and washes and building your own wash and base coating, getting a smooth base coat. And yeah, I'm progressing through kind of fundamental stuff, and it's going to take me a while because I've got a ton of different like ideas of what to do. So anyway, that can help you also. And I also, the other thing you may not know, Saxolia, is that I'm the creator of Reaper Master Series paints. So I actually made this paint line from the ground up. I learned just enough paint chemistry to make myself dangerous, and I hand mixed every batch for 15 years. So I also talk a lot about the chemistry behind it, the pigments and everything else, which is different than you're going to get in most artist courses because most artists don't make the paint line that they use. So all that together hopefully will help you out. All right, I'm going to load up my brush. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to put it over this color. I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to pull it down. I'm going to leave a lot of it pooling. I'm going to go out to the edges. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to, you can see the wash has settled in the cracks. I'm a real treasure. Yes, that's good. We like that. So I'm going to bring back my brush that's just kind of dried off. And I'm going to slurp off the excess fluid. Actually, this brush is pretty little, so let me come back with a slightly bigger brush, my mixing brush. And I'm just going to use the tip of the brush to kind of pull off a little bit of the excess fluid. You don't have to pull off a lot of it. I just don't want a huge puddle. So we'll let that dry and see how it goes. That's pretty big puddly still. Let me pull off just a little bit extra. And you can play with it while it's still wet. You can keep dabbing it off if you want. Just be aware that there will come a point as it starts to dry that you don't want to touch it. And while we wait for that to dry, I will continue shading my area over here with the traditional way, which is layering. The traditional for me, rather. So yeah, I go into a lot of different stuff on these stuff. So I think I'm the only paint line designer that does all this crap on YouTube and Twitch and Patreon and all the rest of it. So, and if you have any artsy, like 2D comparison questions, since I came from a 2D background, you may ask and I will answer to the best of my ability. It's been a long time since I've done 2D. My favorite media, or one of my favorite medias in 2D was actually colored pencil. But I also did oils a long time ago, and I'm about to go back and try oils on miniatures. So this could be, it could be catastrophic or it could be fun. I'm hoping it's going to be fun. So I'm just kind of painting my shadows a little bit into these recesses. Darkening them down. Notice that the paint dries a lot faster when I'm just putting a small amount into the shadows. Really isn't gonna, like, this is still wet and this is already drying. So the other advantage of layering, in my opinion, is that since you're using only a very small amount of paint and you're putting it very thin and you're not letting it pool in general, although I got a little pooly there, it dries faster. So you can keep moving and keep going faster than your wash. You have to sit there and wait for your wash to dry, and you don't have to do that with layering. In general, the minute you put it on, the minute it's dry. So I'm gonna actually, and you can use a wash consistency for shading. So like I could just take the wash and I could paint it really thin into these areas. I'm gonna concentrate the darker color toward the top because that's where the folds are tighter. And I'm gonna leave it a little bit lighter toward the bottom. Yeah, I have them. I have a whole bunch. Gosh, I was so into CP. Like I was so into colored pencil. And I have a ton of, like I've got, you don't even want to know how much money I have in colored pencils, Pendrake. A lot of Dick Blick Christmas gift certificates went into my colored pencil collection. And I have several lines of water-soluble colored pencils. They're very interesting. They're very interesting. Like ideally you use them kind of for groundwork and then you go over it, in my opinion, with traditional colored pencils. You do get some pencil stroke marks unless you have a very light hand, but there is a bit of texture. And if you're smart, you use that. You play with that as part of the artwork. Yeah, I love the Prismacolors. That's what I grew up with, was the Prismacolors copper hand, and I still have a ton of them. And there are just some colors in that line that I can't do without. But yeah, the great irony of my existence is that okay, so that's almost dry. The great irony of my existence is that I was totally into oils and I hated acrylics for the longest time. And then I started miniature painting and now I'm a master of acrylics and I don't even remember what I'm doing with oils. So we'll have to see. I just got a new set of oils for miniature painting and I'm really psyched to try them. So, all right, look at the difference here. Okay. Yeah, they actually don't take forever. So okay, here you go, Sexilia. Miniatures oils are very different beast from traditional canvas oils. You're using them super thin over a surface that you've usually underpainted. So that if you lay out if you underpaint in burnt umber, like, you do sometimes on canvas, if you underpaint in acrylic, then you're working the oils super thin over the surface. You're definitely laying them down next to each other and doing cross blends. And you're using just this infinitesimally small amount. You can either use them full strength and just use a little and just push it over the surface, or you can, add a little bit of solvent to thin it. Either way, they dry super fast, like much faster. You're not talking days and you don't see cracking, because you're not putting it on super thick. It's when you use, and this is for acrylics also. If you even put miniatures acrylics on in too thick of a coat with unthinned application, you will potentially see cracking. It's pretty rare these days because a lot of people are going to more plastic bases, but in general, that is a thing that can happen. And that's what I find in oils also, is if you put it on too thick, that's what you're going to get. But when I talked to, we have a local paint club and we host it. And two of the guys who come are actually they only use oils on miniatures. Like that's all they do. And AJ kind of showed me what he was doing last time he came over this last weekend. And he's just pushing it over the surface so thin. There's no way you get cracking. And it dries he says within a day. Like he can essentially work on the model and just set it up. And then the next day he can go back and add. So that's how thin he's pushing the oil, though. So if you did decide to use oils to create textures and build it up a little more traditionally on the surface, then I'm curious to see what happens then. And that's something I'm going to be experimenting with on my own. But if you're doing the thinned applications, glazes dry in an hour. So it's really, you're just working so thin. So give it a try, maybe, because it is a very different beast. I didn't understand until I watched him work his oils. I'm like, oh, that's it. So it's just like acrylics, where we're working our acrylic paint so dang thin that we change the rules of acrylics, and same with oils on miniatures. So I think it's fascinating. I think it's super, super fascinating. So let's look at these, guys. Let's look at these. So one of these we did with a wash, and one of these we did just with layering. Sexilia, there also is a guy, he actually comes to ReaperCon. He's fantastic. His name is James Wobble. He's on Twitch under Wapelius. Maybe we've got, do we have a link for Wopple's Twitch? James Wobble does miniatures. He's constantly on Twitch, and because he's constantly working on commission work, and he only uses oils. And so if you want to watch a wizard, because he did 20 years in traditional art with oils, and then he transited to miniatures, he's a freaking wizard with oils. Yeah, Wopelius. Grey Wolf there we go. Yeah, I know. I always have to make sure I'm spelling it properly also. So yeah, James Wapple, go check that one out. Yeah, we're always helpful. So yeah, then you can see somebody do crazy good stuff with oils. Like James is just amazing with oils. He does it differently too. Like he'll sponge off. Like he'll use micro sponges to take extra oil off the surface and stuff like that. Whereas I think AJ just works super thin to begin with. So they're definitely, just like with acrylics in our hobby, there are definitely different styles evolving on how to use oil painting, which I think is, again, super fantastic and fabulous. Like our hobby's just really progressing. Like I just love seeing people iterate on mediums. Like it's so fantastic. Everybody's got a different style. Watching me versus watching James, versus watching like Aaron Lovejoy at Miniature Monthly, who sets everything up with an airbrush and then goes in at it. Like so many of us do totally different things with the hobby, and all of it's valid. Like all of it is valid. There is no wrong way to do this. So if you get excited by the thought of like playing with mediums and pushing them and seeing like where you can take them, you will love this hobby because man, you can do almost anything. I just love it. It's super fantastic. So you can see the difference here, right? You can see which one I did the wash on. And we did get a kind of a rich red with it. And actually I didn't shake up my medium very much because we had a little glossiness. Although not, the problem with glossiness is you can see it more on a dark color than a light. So it's not super glossy. If Reaper doesn't do Cav anymore, and that's why I haven't, since it's not our, Cav is not ours anymore, it's Talon. I'd be unlikely to Corsair. Also because that is the one thing, mechs and tanks and vehicles in general, oh my, is the one part of the hobby that I've never stuck my toe in. So I'm not like expert level at it. I would be complete beginner level at it. I've like sat down with Glenn and that's where he explained the highlighting and shading process that he uses. But it's just like, it's not my shtick because I much enjoy like living surfaces and textures and not mechanicals, but someday maybe. But yeah, so, all right, but you can see the difference, right? So one, you can see a little shininess in where the dark color comes in. And so, like I said, it's just the nature of darks that they tend to look a little bit shinier. And it's not that they have any less matting agent in them. It's just the way they reflect the light. But then you've got this. So we got a really dark, rich color, but the problem now here is that we have to go back over it with our base coat to bring that color back up. And if you've ever gone over black primer as opposed to white primer, then you already know that trying to bring up a lighter, brighter color over the top of a dark can be hard, right? It can be harder. So what we've done here is, yeah, we've gotten this, and it wasn't even faster. Like, that's the thing. We had to sit and wait for it to dry. I could have already highlighted this in the time it took that to dry. So I shake my fist at you in true Luca fashion, washes, because you are not faster. Such a myth. It's such a myth. Shaking my fist. I need the Luca emote. Yes, thank you, Quindy. Washes. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, it will be sad not to have a Quindy at ReaperCon. All right, I'm going to fix this. So, okay, so say you do this. Say you put a wash on your miniature, and then you are like, oh noes, but I was going to bring up my reds really bright, and now I will have to fight that horrible dark backdrop to do this. Well, there is an answer. And Saxilia might already know what it is, because if you come from traditional painting, then you know that you just have to lay down some white or mix some white in, and you get opacity, and you get, you can do that. So what we're going to do here is we are going to mix a little white into our Asmodeus red, and we're going to use that, and then we're going to go over the top of that real quick with an additional layer of pure Asmodeus. So, sorry, I made the wrong color, didn't I? Because we were supposed to use Urgathoa. I told you I was squirrel-brained today, everybody. I'm totally squirrel-brained. Wrong red. Wrong red. Yes. And that's why I totally agree with you that when you're doing armies or you're doing like, war bands or whatever you're doing, then waiting for the drying time is not a problem. But I will still hold you to the fact that going over the surfaces again is. Unless, since you're assembly line painting and maybe you're just doing monsters for D&D and you just don't care about highlighting, then you're fine. Because you're just able to leave everything dark and you're fine. It's when you need to go back over to bring your paint back up to a decent level so you can highlight it, then I start going, okay, now it's not saving me any time. And of course, that's what I'm always doing. So since I'm doing the whole, I shade, then I highlight, then I've got to go back and toss that. So let's not put white in it first. Let's actually grab our Urgathoa and not put white in it first and see if we can bring this up. Urgathoa has decent coverage, but it's still not going to be quite as good as working over white. Actually, let me just show you that. Let me just show you guys that. Why don't we do all of it? Let's experiment. We like experimenting. This is a experimental stream. It's not a experimental stream. Although I really love spearmint too. All right, I am silly today. Did I warn you guys? Did I warn you I was silly? Let me grab some white. And then we're gonna fix this, darn it. All right. So we've done this before on some other models, but since we have some new viewers, this is a trick. If you've done black primer and you are like, oh no, it is taking me forever to go up to a fairly bright red on my black primer, what have I done? What you can do is pretend that you actually used white primer, and you can put a little bit of white underneath first. And I'm not even going to use a full strength white. I'm actually thinning it quite a bit. I'm going to do about a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1. And you can either mix this directly with your paint, or you can do just straight up pure white. So there's our red. So either we can take a little bit of our white and we can mix it with our red, and we can start with this color instead, which is kind of a pinky color. Let's do that on one part. Or you can just go under it with white and go over it with your full strength red. I will be there, I hope. Scrying Eye, the plan is that we're going. However, we are maybe getting a puppy 2 weeks before ReaperCon, so I may not be teaching. If I have a puppy to corral, it really depends. I don't know. Everything is up in the air until I find out if we have a puppy. So I'm going to go back over this area with this kind of off-white. This mixture of our red with our white. Now I'm going to grab some of my just straight up white. And I'll put that on a fold. Yeah, how active I am at ReaperCon will all depend on the puppy and whether I have puppy sitting, and I may hold off teaching just because I don't know that I'll be able to cement a puppy sitting plan that will satisfy me. It's going to be a really baby puppy, so I don't want to give the puppy a bad experience with so many people and so much noise. So we'll see. I'm planning on going, but in what capacity I will be there. I may just camp out at the table with a little puppy crate next to me and just demo whatever you guys want me to, instead of doing a formal teaching thing. I'm paying my own way anyway. I'm not depending on Reaper to reimburse me. So, all right. So we've got kind of the lighter color here. We've got kind of the white over here. And then the middle, I'm just leaving it. So let's take our Urgathoa red, which is my, the puppy ultrasound. Puppy mommy has been bred, and the ultrasound will be in about 4 more weeks. So about a month from today, in early June, we will, end of May or early June, we'll know. I'll probably know like the weekend of KublaCon. So if I try to put my original Urgathoa red over the dark wash, just straight up, that's these 2 middle folds. So then I can try to put the Urgathoa red, same consistency, over our earlier layer of slightly lighter Urgathoa, the one I mixed with white. Look at how much lighter that is, folks. And then, and notice how we've got the saturation back. Like, these are still really dull, and that one is more saturated. Here, I'll do the white, and then I'll hold it up for you so you can see it better. So here we've got underpainting in white. And I'm going to bring that in there. And that's even more, that's slightly more vibrant, but either one, this one or that one would work. All right, so they are, as they dry out, they're not like giving me a huge difference. In person, I am seeing a little bit lighter over here and over here, and a little bit darker in the middle. But with this dark color, I'm going to say that, you know, with this red, remember Ergothoa has a lot of coverage too. With this red, I would say you can see it's a little bit more saturated though. I'd probably need one more layer here. When you've got a high coverage color, you can go over black and dark colors a little bit easier. And Ergothoa is pretty decent coverage. I missed that spot. But yeah, in person, and I can see like a little bit more vibrancy over here, but on the stream camera, it's looking similar. So that brought it back up. However, it's still darker. Like, look, still darker. Like, you're still getting more of your original red over here than you are back here. So I would need to do even more, hypothetically, to save it. It does bring it back, but it doesn't bring it fully back. You still get that darker tone that you would get. It's exactly the same tone you'd get if you were painting this over black primer instead of white. This is white primer, this is black. Like, it kind of, that wash kind of brought us that. And if that's what you want, then rock it. Because sometimes you do. Sometimes you're painting like Chaos Space Marines or something really moody and dark and gothy, and you want that dark tone with your red, then just go for it. But yeah, so underpainting is definitely a thing here, Saxilia, with, I use it all the time to do white or dark, light or dark underpainting on my models. Because I find that if I do get too dark or if I want to bring up something really bright, that the underpainting is really, really important. So I'm going to grab a little bit more light and I'm going to bring in this pink again. This is Ergothoa mixed with just a little bit of white. I'm going to do it. I want to lighten the bottoms here a little bit more. Now, if I thinned my Ergothoa red a little bit more, then that light would show through better. So if I take a little brush full of water and I thin it a little, I didn't mix up very much to begin with, so it is wanting to dry in the palette. If you're going to use a well palette like this, use big paint puddles. So use at least 6 drops of paint and a couple of water, at least. I would say 4 drops is minimum, like 4 drops of paint with 2 drops of water, like 6 drops of total fluid. That will keep your paint like wet for a while. We've been working on these for a while. All right, so now I'm going to bring my Ergothoa back in here over the lighter area that I painted in. So that, you can see that that's bringing up the bottom now. We're getting closer to this. We're still not hitting it though. Like the tops, the color that the red turns when it gets put over the white primer is just it's a very different beast than when you've got a dark layer over it. So it's true, Shadow Raven, but it also, socialization is a thing, and I don't want to overwhelm this puppy. Socialization needs to be a positive experience. This puppy may be like totally a social butterfly puppy, but it may not be. And I won't know until I'm at the temperament testing and we take a look at this puppy. Then the work of starting to figure out who this puppy is begins. But I will not commit to anything with the puppy just because I have no idea. If this puppy is a really soft, what we call a soft temperament puppy, a very sensitive puppy, then hitting it with the gigantic, thing of ReaperCon may not be a good idea at 11 weeks or 10 weeks. So yeah. Nope, Corsair. David talked to me about that just the other day, and I shared my naming philosophy, which is that I never, although we can brainstorm a couple of potential names, I never name an animal until I meet it, like have it in person, because the personality is different. So we can still see the difference between the light and the dark, the one that we put the wash over and the one that we didn't. So I'm going to actually solidify my base coat on these. Just put another layer over this. Now we're getting close, but you can still see the difference. Like, so even though as we apply colors, the difference is going to be less and less, doing that dark wash definitely created a difference that is sustaining itself as we go along. So let's grab some Asmodeus Red. Since I mixed it up by mistake, let's put that on for a highlight and see how it looks. And we'll put it on both and we'll see how they look. Your puppy is the only extrovert? That's funny. But yeah, the puppies, and also our puppy, since it's since she will be like, she's part of a breed and maybe I may have a litter with her, she will have a registered name and a regular call name, as we call it. So, but whatever we choose will be based on something in Greek mythology. So let's just put a little bit of this Asmodeus Red. And then we'll put it on the other side. In general, the more layers of acrylic you put on, the less evident your priming choice is going to be. Just because you will eventually just build up a solid coat that will go over the top of your beginning colors. But it's why zenith light highlighting doesn't stay around forever. It's why eventually, no matter what, you're going to cover it up. Or underpainting doesn't stay around forever. So as we start adding highlights, less and less difference is noticed, because as you cover up everything, the paint is opaque and you have to, But notice how much less work this was. And we still have a little bit of a difference here. I'm casting squirrel spells. I'm thinking about muse names. I'm thinking about goddess names. I won't know. There's a lot of great names out there. Back when I was breeding a long, long time ago, more than a decade ago, my kennel name was Sparta Shilohs. So since Sparta is our name, so our first dog was King Leonidas of Sparta, Leo. But I'm partial to muse names. I'm thinking about names like Artemis and stuff like that. It will depend though on the puppy. The puppy's personality will be the determining factor. David, by the way, wants to name her Cerberus and call her Helly for short, for Hellhound. I told him I don't want to have to explain his name choice to everybody I introduce the dog to. Yeah, I do a very light touch layering, and it looks like a lot of work, but remember that most of our work has been on this one. Mostly I've been trying to bring this up. In reality, once you have the brush control down for these tiny things, Saxelia, and you'll get better with brush control with every miniature you paint. But once you've got the brush control down, I can layer very quickly. I'm explaining a lot and talking a lot as we go, so it's taking a while, but I can really do this quite quickly. It's actually going to be a girl, and so it would be Sari if it was Cerberus. Sari, and we'd probably just end up calling her Ciri because, The Witcher. But yeah, so that may be a name. We may consider that. Oh, I've had lots of, I've had Pandora, we had Leonidas. Kiri's real name was Valkyrie. We went a bit Norse there, I'm afraid. But that was because she looked like a Viking dog. So she was a bit of a variant. But yeah, I tend to like we could also just go with Greek words, our first puppy's name, who lives, you may have seen pictures of her on Facebook or met her at ReaperCon, but her name is Astra, so Greek for star. So, that's all open too. I'm not even, this is probably going to be my only puppy for many, many years, so I'm going to hold off completely on even thinking of names until I know. Another thing is, this puppy could be black, could be solid black. The dad is solid black, and it's a dominant gene in that breed. So we could get a black puppy, or we could have a blonde puppy. The puppy mommy is blonde, so that's going to change the name, right? We might name her Nyx if she's black. So, yeah, I'm totally not even thinking of names yet. Although don't tell him, but I am partial to Cerberus. Yes, painting progress goes inverse proportion to puppy talk. It's true. It's Jared and Krista. Well, Jared now. Jared and his new. She became Jared's service dog when he started having seizures. She began alerting to his seizures, even though she hadn't been trained to, because Shilohs are smart and intuitive and excellent alert dogs. But she's still with him. She got diagnosed with cancer, but it went into remission, and so she's still around. She's 11 now, or about to turn 11 later this month. Yeah, colored pencils are unforgivable that way. Oh yeah, yeah. It's so hard with CP when you muck something and then you're like, no, what do I do, right? Because it's so hard to take it back up. And of course, once you like wear down the tooth of the paper and you're like, then you're kind of like, ugh, yeah. That was the one thing I didn't like about CP was how unforgiving it could be. So I always went like with a really light touch, and that meant that I consistently took forever to finish colored pencil pieces. Now I'm much faster with acrylics, so I'm just adding in some shading up here, as you can see. So yeah, so we'll just paint in our shadows here. But yeah, I don't know. The other thing to remember about me is that I am biased. Like, if washes work for you, use them. It's always, I always say this on this stream, but just because I don't like them doesn't mean that they won't work for you. And if they work for you, then by gosh, just, say, to heck with you, Anne, I'm going to use these washes. Like, just do it. But at the same time, in our hobby, a lot of people will pressure you as a beginner to learn things in a specific order. And usually that's base coat, wash, dry brush. And I have met many people who have been, maybe their best friend or their boyfriend was trying to teach them to paint, and they kept telling them that they had to do washes, and they really didn't like the look of it. They didn't like how it looked, and they didn't like the dirtiness of it. But they felt that like that was the way you had to learn, and it's like, no. At any point you can do it different. So don't let anybody pressure you into doing that way, but if it works for you, use it. Lumos is a good name for that. Yeah, I just love colored pencil. I mean, they're so... if only they didn't take me forever. But I do love doing animal portraits with them because you can get it so soft. You can get that soft feel to it. I think CP is really good for animal portraits. I did a couple when friends of mine lost their pets. I did tribute portraits for a couple of people. And I enjoyed those. All right, going to put in a little shadow here. We're just going to bring in our layering and get our shadow going on super fast. Now that we've sat here and chatted and diverged from our original stream stuff. Yeah, wash is one tool in the toolbox. It's true. And sometimes I use it. Sometimes I want it. There are times when I want to darken a whole surface, that I want to dirty it down, and that I do want to shift it all darker, and then I will absolutely use a wash. Yep. It's like there are other ways to do it, and it all depends on your goals. It's actually, but yeah, that's what they show in the paint kits, right? And that's basic. Like, it is a basic setup. If you have the Reaper Learn to Paint kit, the first one is like that, but the second one is about layering. And if you find that washes kind of leave you cold, pick up the second one. Especially if you have an art background, like, pick up the Layer Up kit. They're written by Rhonda Bender, who does the bird, who's Bird with a Brush, and she does Beyond the Kit here on Reaper. She does a show on our channel on, is that Mondays, Quindy? Like, is Rhonda's show on Monday? I never remember. I'm going to do a little bit of shading right here where I see a little bit of a divot. A little bit of shading on the bottom here. Monday at 2 p.m. Central Time, USA. Yeah, Rhonda does Learn to Paint kits, and she also does a stream here. And she's great. And she also has a 2D art Like she does a lot of classes with 2D and different mediums. And so she's another good one, Sexilia, to tune in on Monday. I do this show every weekday at the same time. So, and we paint a different model. We've got a rotation of 6 different models. So tomorrow, for example, or no, Monday, sorry, it's the weekend. So Monday we'll be bringing back our bust. So this is, an example. Yeah, technique tools. Yeah, actually, if you go to my Patreon, Sexilia, I've got a list of techniques and the order to learn them in my opinion. It's only my opinion. But it's patreon.com/paintingbig, and I've got there's free stuff. You don't have to sign up. If you just go to the Patreon, you should see public posts. And if you scroll down with those public posts, you should see like my techniques list. And it kind of like gives you not just mechanical techniques too. There's 2 classes of techniques in miniature painting, in my opinion. One is mechanical, like washes and layering and glazing and all that. The other one is conceptual, and that has to do with light. Like we're doing non-metallic metal effects where you're painting a surface to look metal without it actually using metallic paints. Or OSL, which is object source lighting. So if you're doing a sword as if it was glowing, for example, that'd be OSL. Yeah, so go on over. I have like some public stuff on my Patreon, and that's one of the things, because I'm a technique whore. I really love technique, and I love analyzing technique. So yeah, the bust is something I wanted to do because I personally, when I'm painting for myself, I paint a lot of busts, and they put out that bust for ReaperCon last year. And since then, there have been like busts coming out in like the Kickstarters and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk about bust techniques on the stream because it is a bit of a different ball game, because you've got so much more room, you can do a lot more texture and a lot more detail. So that's personally where I like to be. That's why my Patreon is called Painting Big. I do a lot of little painting on the Patreon as well, because more people are painting 28 millimeter than are painting bigatures. But I personally love big models. I gravitate toward the big stuff. And tomorrow I will be on Twitch. It's about 3:30 p.m. USA Central Time. I will be on. I'll probably be working on my big Wolfen model, because I'm doing some resculpting on him. And I need to get the elbow resculpted, and I need to get the neck. We're sculpting a mane on him because I had to lengthen his neck. So there's also that aspect of the hobby as well, if you're new to it, which is conversion, which is changing the sculpt to be more what you yourself, something that if you feel like there's a part that you would like to change, or you're trying to make a miniature match a character better, or, anything like that. In this case, I felt like the model there were some anatomical things that bugged me, and I wanted to change it a little bit. So I've been doing sculpting on that, on top of the existing figure. Yes. Well, good. Then you are absolutely welcome into the Anne clan, Sexilia. I am so into all that stuff. So it makes me excited. It's why I'm picking up oils again for this hobby, because I've been doing acrylics for decades now, and I want, like you've been doing something, you feel like you've got a really good handle on it, and it's exciting to pick up something new, even if you're going to suck at it for a while. And I expect to suck at oils for a little while. Sadly, the first model I decided to use oils on is kind of not safe for work, so I can't paint it on stream tomorrow. I would have to, I guess I could put little like sticky stuff, pasties over everything, but that would be kind of hard to paint around. So I may just have to choose a different model to try out oils on stream, because I know a lot of you have been interested to watch me go back to it, as a total noob, to play around with it and try to figure out how it works. Because we're all total noobs on that, right? Except for a couple of us maybe who've tried oils. So you can watch me noob it up. I'll have to figure out. I'm sure I've got all these busts and 75 millimeter figures, and I'm certain I can find something else that I would like to do. So you can see me blocking in shadows on here, and it's going pretty quick. This one is, if you want to look at it, not safe for work. So if you're at work, don't do it. Google Black Sun Miniatures. And then right after it, Google Dragon's Daughter. And you're looking for the bust, not the like 75 millimeter. If it's a whole figure, it's the wrong one. And it's pretty inferior, actually. I don't like the whole figure. But the bust is the newer one. But it's definitely not safe for work, so... I tend to like painting pretty women, and this is a monstrous pretty woman, which is even better, so... But there, you can look it up, and I don't have to show it on stream, because that would not be workable here. See, and I think she's a very simple model, Nomad Zeke. I mean, yeah, you've got to paint a lot of scales, but she's really just skin, scales, and cloth, so... Except for that dagger, but it does have a lighting effect, of course, because the dagger's on fire, so that's going to be fun. I had forgotten that the dagger was on fire. I was thinking she was going to be easy, and now I've realized I've let myself in for it, doing OSL and oils. But, hey, go big or go home, right? Oh, I was just telling people which mini I was using for my first oil painting miniature, but I can't show her on stream because she's not safe for work, so Big Apple. So as you can see, the shadows are coming in very quickly on this once I actually like stop talking about puppies and start painting. Ah, dear. So yeah, so I just like the figure. For some reason, I seem to gravitate toward my paint Black Sun miniatures. For some reason, I always pick the nudes, and I'm not sure why, but oh well. It is what it is. So that's the one. I picked it to do oils on for my first figure because it is so simple, because there's just a little bit, like, you know, there's lots of scales I'll need to learn to paint detail on, but that's kind of the point, is I want to learn to use oils. So I didn't want to start with something big and smooth and with no texture or anything. I'll probably underpaint it. I finished all of the cleanup and sculpting, like green work. It needed a little bit of green work yesterday, and so now I need to prime it and then underpaint it. And then I can start. Yeah, exactly. It's just that for here, like, the problem is Twitch really doesn't want you to put that stuff up on it, Celia, so I don't want to get flagged for adult content, because then they won't share you, and like some platforms won't share you in search options if you get flagged for that, so I'm always very careful what I use on Twitch, so I have no problems. I have a not safe for work channel on my own Discord, just so I can share these sort of things. So for people who are my patrons, you'll be able to see some work in progress shots once I put them up on my Discord. It is a Discord for my patrons, though. So all right, so now we're getting around, and we're mostly not noticing. Like, we can still see a little bit that this one is darker, but we're not really noticing it at this point, now that I've added in the shadows on everything. It's just a tiny bit different, and as we continue to add highlights, the difference will become even less. So the answer really is, whether you're going over a dark base coat or a light base coat, eventually everything equalizes, and how much time one takes as opposed to the other is just what techniques you're using and what color it is. Like, I would say with a lighter piece, you're going to be able to do a lot less work if you start over white primer, whereas with a dark piece, maybe you can, cut some corners starting with dark primer. Our shader is a handmade mix, Big Apple. We mixed it because I started with Urgathoa Red on this, with Pathfinder line Urgathoa Red. And I did 50-50 with Necromancer Purple, but it wasn't dark enough. So then I added 1 drop of blue liner. And that made this very pretty purple right up here. And that's what I'm using to shade with. When I did the wash, I used Rogue Liner, but then I went back and added Rogue Liner to the shadows and the other one too, so they would be equivalent. For the most part, though, I'm going over that with the purple. I prefer the purple. because we're doing burgundy and I wanted something like burgundy wine, but without having to fight with the coverage. Also, I don't have burgundy wine in my box right now, for which Michael Proctor is going to yell at me since it's one of his favorite colors. I did Blorfier on the cream and made a dot in the elbow, but because we haven't highlighted or shaded the cream at all, we're just fine. We'll just go back and clean that up easy. When you do that, when you leave a dark spot on your light color, the best thing you can do is to go over it with white and then to go over it with the base coat again. So we can go and take our thin down white and we can paint that right over the top. That way, when we go back over it with the cream, it's going to blend right in and you're not going to see that dark at all. It depends, actually. So my thing that I do, I mix all the time. I do custom shades all the time. But what I have is, you know those little artist trading cards, the watercolor ones? I just do this. So when I do mixes, because I do mixes a lot, I always have like kind of a color in my head that I really want. And so I don't do is pre-bottled for most of it. I also have the kind of the oil painters thing where I do like, I make a master formula and then I add white lights or darks to it to mix shadows and stuff. So I just use these. I do a quick swatch after my painting session. I do quick swatches off of my palette. Then I grab a pen and I just do my quick ratios. And because I'm using dropper bottle paints, it is easy to do a number of drops, right? 3, 3, 1 in this case. So yeah, and then I just keep this because my models sit up on the shelf behind you with the Overwatch figures. I just put this right under the model and then I've got it. And I use both sides if I need to. So like, yeah, it's easy. I mean, with dropper bottles, it's super easy. Although sometimes it'll be like 1 + 2 plus a touch of. And, and this is 1 and this is 2. So then I've just got shorthand. But yeah, but it's super easy. And I love the artist trading cards for this. I think they're really, really useful this way. Oh, I need to put that under Kitty Cat. That was Kitty Cat's fur colors, by the way, if you missed. We did Kitty Cat yesterday. We put eyes on Kitty Cat. Kitty Cat Paladin. Gotta love it. Kitty Cat Paladin might be my favorite figure we're painting right now, honestly. Oh, yeah, I decided I had to lengthen its neck too, Bryce. And I need to resculpt the elbow. So we're doing Wolfen tomorrow on my stream. And I'm going to, I kind of blocked in and got the head pinned on and spaced out. So now I need to put the fur fill. I mean, with the cards, if you're thinking it that way, but I mean, if you really want to, Sexlia, if you want to use those kind of cards, to be honest, I think I would still use white, even if I primed black, because the important part with me on those trading cards is being able to match the color when I redo it. And it's going to be much easier to match it if I'm looking at it kind of thinned on a white card. It's going to kind of, if I put a little dab next to it, like when I remix that color, I'm going to put a dab next to it on that card. It's going to be easier for me to judge the color over white. I found that over the years of mixing batches of paint is that over white, I can judge whether a color is consistent easier than over a black. Over black, everything tends to be dark down, and I think that near colors will read as closer together. But on white, I can see the difference better. So that's why I always use white, even if I was working over a black base. And I do sometimes use, do we have a Zenith model right now? We're not currently working on a Zenith model, but I have done this kind of style before where we work over a Zenith. Which by Zenith, I mean a black primer, or in the case of Bones, a black paint, and then a white spray primer, white or light gray spray primer over the top. So, did the eyes. Oh, I just did the eyes yesterday because I felt like it, Bryce. I know. David will be so thrilled, and I'll be so disappointed in myself. So yeah, so this is because of the spray texture, right? It looks like stone because I painted it black because spray primers don't work great on Reaper plastic. So I painted it black and then I sprayed it over the top with a white, and that's why you've got kind of a stone look. But the point is really that this is like very simplistic underpainting. So if you are not into like underpainting the model, but you want to kind of get that effect where you've got shadows where the shadows belong, you know, dark colors and then light colors on the top, this is a way to do it quick and dirty. And so working this way over miniatures can give you that benefit of having black painted into the shadows or dark, and then white painted on the upper surfaces. That said, I do like to accentuate that. Like, I think I just did something on that, didn't I, for Patreon? Where I showed that you can always, yeah, I did actually for my paint along. Here, one second. We've gone totally off topic. I told you guys it was a squirrel brain day. So we're doing this model for my paint along, for one of my paint alongs for $15 tier on my Patreon. And one of the things to note is that once you've got a Zenith Prime, you want to usually go back and add more white. So on the shoulder here, the Zenith Prime is most of it, but on here, this bright area, and here, and a little bit here, it is actually white paint where I've gone back in and I've punched it up. It's fine. Something with a lot of creases, honestly, I still prefer to add in shadows, but it's all in what you want. Like if you want if the color to feel lighter, then I would definitely still start white and just add a lot of shadows, you know, just paint in the creases dark. But if you are starting with a darker model, you may get more mileage off of starting dark, but then maybe doing a little bit of white underpainting on top of those creases, on top of the folds, just to make sure you can bring up your paint a little faster. But yeah, so this is an example of how I would tune Zenith, because the white used to be like this color, like this guy. But notice how much brighter it gets when I just brush a bit of pure white over the tops where I really want it to be white. So I call that tuning Zenithal. I think most people do. So you can start with the Zenith Prime and then you can pop it darker and lighter where you really want it to. So I could go back in and line here and add more darks, for example. So anyway, that's Zenith priming. That's your very short thing of... Oh, sorry. Did I miss you, Freya? What? I don't think I got I think I missed that question. Everybody's talking. Help! Help! Hold on, Freya. I'll get to you. Do we... Boom. Let me look for you. Or can somebody repost it? Oh, colors. Okay. Yeah, I can talk about that. One sec. Let me pop my arm back in. Pop my arm back into the box. That sounds bad. Sounds painful. There. Sit. Stay. Okay, so our starting color is actually a beautiful color from Reaper's Pathfinder line. The burgundy color is Urgathoa Red, 89508. Highly recommend it. Actually, highly recommend it along with the highlight color. They're both like right next to each other in the Pathfinder line. These are two of my favorite dark warm reds. I think they're wonderful. Yes, thanks for helping. And then for the shadow, we mixed a bit of Urgathoa. I wanted a more purple shadow. So I tried mixing it with Necromancer Purple, but it wasn't dark enough. So I chose to add just a drop of blue liner, which is liners are regular paints, only a little bit more fluid. So they're made for lining around areas to bring them out. But you can also just use them as regular darkeners or for washes. They're good for that. So it's 111 to make this beautiful purple color right here. And Necromancer Purple is in the Gloom Grave Fast palette. That whole Fast palette is really good, so highly recommend. And then I believe we used Gnawed Bone, which is another Fast palette color, and also from that Fast palette, same Fast palette. But this dark cream color is Gnawed Bone from there, I believe. And it's kind of a replacement for a color that I used to have in the line that got canceled, which was Stained Ivory. But you could also use like Yellowed Bone. It's a little bit lighter, but you could use it. We're going to be bringing the cream up a bit toward white, and I'm probably going to shade it down with maybe a little bit of a purple hue in the future. Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it, Scrying Eye. So yeah, we'll be bringing up this red with a little bit brighter reds. Here's the Urgathoa Red on the palette, and then this is the Asmodeus Red on the palette as well. So the Asmodeus Red looks a lot brighter out of the bottle. But that's part of that is looking at it through the white of the palette. And then we're going with a black, like ostrich plume kind of fan. So I haven't gotten to those parts yet. Her skin tone's pretty complicated. I think I used a lot of rosy skin colors in it, or I was just mixing a lot of pink into tanned skin. And then we added a lot of rosy hues to her cheeks. The hair is a brunette. You can see all of this, Freya. We have it all on our YouTube. Every time I do one of these shows, Quindy gets it up on YouTube. It sits in VOD for a little bit, but then it goes eventually up on YouTube. And so if you look her up, you should be able to look on her YouTube and search by either her number or her name. And that will enable you to find the session where I did her hair, the session where I did her skin. So that is her info. So then you can go and just watch. If you want to know how I did the hair or how I did the skin or whatever, you can just go and watch. It's the great thing about Reaper is all this stuff is up for posterity. We have almost 500 episodes in this show of all different figures. And so there's a lot to be learned on our YouTube. It's not as much blending as you'd think because layering. So the other thing, I talked a lot about washes, but I didn't talk a lot about layering Sexilla. But when you're working with really thin paint, it's not that much. It's just little touches, and you're using such thin color, and you're just building it up super fast, and it pretty much dries the instant you put it down. So I'm going to be doing a layering video for my YouTube because I want to talk about it, because layering is my favorite technique. And then there's wet blending. You could just wet blend it, but that takes a lot of, that's pro. I would say that some people wet blending wet into wet, acrylic, they take to it right away, but others just have infinite problems with it and it just dries too fast. So your mileage may vary with that one, but layering in general. Yes, Quindy is totally, yeah, and I do agree. I guess she's got such a big smile. I wanted to really give her rosy cheeks. But yeah, oh, no problem. Yeah, thanks, Grey Wolf, for bringing Freya's question back up. The chat is moving pretty fast today, and I'm also trying to get some done, get some painting done. I know, terrible, isn't it? But now we're on our last three minutes or so, and I'm just checking to make sure that I put my shading in everywhere before I lose this color. But I think I didn't get all my lining in, but I got most of my shading in. Now, for areas that are underneath, I'm probably going to block that all in shadow. Almost all. Underneath that arm. You can see how dark all that is, so I'm just going to paint a layer of the purple over the top of the red. I think we've got most of it. Most of it, though. Like I said, I missed a little lining, but in general, I've got my shadows painted in now, and you can see the shadows very clearly. And once we put highlights on, then that starts making everything stand out. But we still want this to be a dark red, so we have to be careful when we start highlighting as to how much area we cover our highlights with. Usually, we did a pretty good job catching all the questions today. I mean, if we lose one, but Grey Wolf saves it, then I think we're pretty good. You guys didn't have to slow mode. But if we get a lot, there's some days where I feel like I really can't keep up. I know we did slow mode the other day. But yeah, so she's coming right along, guys. So I'm going to actually swatch out. Let's see. Do I have a card for her? I don't think I have a card for her yet. Or if I do, it's gotten eaten under the bust. So I'll grab a new artist trading card. And if you pick these up, I prefer the watercolor ones because you can put a lot of fluid on them. So I'll just do my swatch while I ask if there are any more questions. And sometimes, I guess this is the advantage too, Sexilla, of doing this over white instead of over black, is that I can take some water and pull the color out. And for me, that really lets me see the color better, especially with darks where, it can be hard to see the hues. But here, now I can look at this and say, oh yeah, okay, so I used a little bit of X and Y and Z. Part of that's just because, I've mixed these paints so I can spot the different pigments, but part of it is also just that, okay, this is a purple, definitely. And so when I'm aiming to remix it, it'll just let me see the hue a little bit better. So 1 to 1 to 1. Urgathoa red. Sometimes I write the number, sometimes I write the name. Necro Purple. If I don't have the number like super on speed dial in my brain, I'll do the name. And 9066. I know blue liner by heart. And we'll put shadows on red. And then we'll put rogue liner, rogue shadow. I call it rogue liner, but it's rogue shadow. It is a liner though, for lining and darkest reds. I probably would have remembered that second one, but you never know. Oh, I see. Yeah, slow mode only helps if it's one person talking a lot. Yeah. All right, so I've got that nice little swatch, and I can put it up on my shelf of minis underneath Madam so that we have her colors for next time. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Once again, I am streaming tomorrow at about 3:30 p.m.-ish USA Central Time on twitch.tv/paintingbig. We'll be working on a giant wolfen and sculpting in the rest of the mane and fixing the elbow. And then, finally, it should be time to prime that sucker and start getting some paint on him. So yeah. Thank you for all my socials, Quindy. God knows we talked about a lot of them during this stream. Welcome to all you new people who are asking questions. Always feel free to come back. We do this every weekday here on Reaper Miniatures Twitch. And yeah. Super. Yeah, y'all come back for sure. All right. Yeah. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Do we have like Reaper Land later today? Quindy? Or another stream? Or are they taking a day off after Kickstarter? Ah, 3 p.m. Central for Reaperland. Don't miss it. All right, everybody, have a fantastic weekend. I'll see some of you on my channel tomorrow. Bye.